Yo, what's happening? I'm Nick. This is Wales in the Movies. Welcome back. First one of these videos I've done in ages. I'll speak a little bit about that later. For now, I'm back to talk about a film I saw in the cinema this week, which has kind of woken me from a Wales in the Movies moaning slumber. And it's called The Kingsman. What do I want to talk about? Okay, I want to talk to you about banal British nationalism. I want to talk to you about white man's burden or Englishman's burden or something like that. I want to talk to you about the representation of Scotland. And of course, I want to talk to you about the representation of Cymru. Let's get into it. So, so how's my hair looking? That's fine. Getting a bit grey in it. So I saw the film this week, right? And I kind of had read a couple of reviews about it. It's almost like an ahistorical film. And as one of my Twitter followers wrote today, there's loads of problems with it. Almost you could probably look at it as a little bit offensive from a kind of veteran standpoint, because it basically rewrites the history of the start of World War One in order to make a franchise action popcorn movie. It almost feels like a Tarantino kind of thing, almost like Inglourious Bastards, if you know what I mean. That kind of comic-y treatment of such serious matter, which is one thing I'm not going to talk about at length, but it's there, and that may be one of the reasons why people don't like it or object to it. What I want to talk to you about first is how the film treats the subject matter set at the onset of World War One, and it starts off going pretty woke. Pardon me for saying that word. I know it polarizes reactions. Starts off pretty woke. It's set in, I think it's South Africa. It might be Zimbabwe or Rhodesia as it was then. But it talks about Ray finds his character who's volunteering with the British Cross with his wife to help people. And they talk about their privilege, their white English privilege or their aristocracy privilege. And it introduces a character played by Djimon Hounsou, who plays a kind of token, black man in it, which this film's got to have. And I get that. Totally get that. And he's always pretty good to watch. So despite the film starting off in this kind of self-aware way, it doesn't really end like that. I'll point you to a video I made back in 2017. It's called Post-Brexit British Cinema. It's about my prediction that post-Brexit and the Churchill films that were out all the time then, that there's going to be a steady rise of British wartime films. And I think that's pretty much proved to be right. So despite the fact the film starts off on this, aren't we aware of our privilege? The Empire was bad tone. By the end of the film, of course, and throughout the rest of it, it turns out that it's England, and I mean England. England's job to save the world. England's job to police the world. England's job to set up agencies that need to be in control of world events. Now, throughout the film, of course, the word England is used again and again and again to mean Britain or the UK. Whenever they're talking about fighting in terms of defending from other countries, and particularly the Germans, they talk about England. England is fighting. The USA or America needs to join England in the war. They don't say the UK, they don't say Britain, they say England, despite the fact that on the screen in text a few times, in text legend and on maps, there's the word Britain. So you've got this kind of, which we're all used to, this canonistic blurring, of England, Britain, and the UK, which is kind of the bane of our country and other countries, isn't it? That's why most of the world thinks they're the same place. So you've got that consistently. However, then you've got the Scottish element of the film. Now, check this out. It turns out that according to this film, directed by Matthew Vaughn, the First World War, the Great War, was effectively, according to this movie, manipulated into being. The assassination of Ferdinand was manipulated into being by what's alluded to as a bitter Scottish nationalist who's trying to bring down empires, particularly the British, across the world. And he at least at one point alludes to the Highland clearances. And this character, who's a secret character, who's not revealed facially until the end, is not played by a Scottish person, notably. So the representation of Scotland is, I don't think it can be accidental that the villainous character is a bitter, vengeful Scottish nationalist. Yet there are positive mentions, plenty of them, to Scotland in the film. You've got a whole scene of a Scottish regiment who are all pretty heroic in kilts, playing bagpipes with distinct Scottish accents, lots of references to Scotland, Scottish names in the film. And of course, in the film, particularly at the end, when everyone's celebrating at the end, when the King of England, who's portrayed as much more positive than the Tsar of Russia or the King of Germany, when the King of England is celebrating at the end and they're all outside Buckingham Palace, you've got Union Jacks, you've got St. George's crosses, and you've got saltires. And of course, guess what you haven't got is that bad boy behind us. You haven't got a Welsh character. You haven't got a Welsh accent. You certainly haven't got Welsh soldiers, or as usual, as I've said a million times, no imagery and nothing to represent us. Despite, of course, one of the biggest actors in the film being one of our most prominent actors, Rhys Ifans. So how does this feel as a Welsh person again, to see a film that's a movie that's gone out to millions of people worldwide, that'll be watched across the whole planet, that tells the world yet again that England and Britain are the same place. You can occasionally throw Scotland in there. Scottishness is part of it. They're distinct, but they are part of England or part of the UK, however they want to confuse it. And of course, we don't exist. We don't exist again. To me, this feels grim. It's just deflating. It's deflating. I nearly walked out of the cinema a couple of times, but then one scene, particularly a scene in the trenches, really kind of gripped me. And at one point I was thinking, wow, this is quite tense. And I wish Bond was a bit more like this sometimes. The presence of Ralph Fiennes is a problem actually with that. Other than that, the second half of the film I found at times gripping and enjoyable. But it's deeply problematic from a position of respect for, I'd say, war veterans. And again, in its representation of the UK, stroke Britain, stroke England, Scotland, Wales, and of course, we haven't even talked about Northern Ireland, but, I don't want to talk about Northern Ireland. They're a different country as far as I'm concerned, and a different island for sure. So there's that. And it feels deflating. And I don't think we help ourselves here, do we? And we've got all the actors, loads of them. Pretty good, aren't you? Rhys, Michael, Matthew, Sir Anthony, Catherine, Eve, Dame Shan. We got all the actors, we got all the writers, got directors, studios, locations, and the stories. My God, we got the stories. We just don't do them, do we? And it's clear that the Brits aren't going to do it for us. They can't get enough of fetishizing the Scots. Oh, we're all so proud of our Scottish brothers who are wrapped in the Union Jack and fighting for the king and for the Union. But there's nothing about Wales ever, is there? No. And that's what's brought me out of my slumber, to point you towards it and to just keep on moaning about it, because gee whiz, someone's got to. The Welsh actors always talk about doing stuff and nothing ever comes of it. Let's see some Wales in the movies. And by the way, Twitter followers and responders, and I'm glad for people who engage with me on this on Twitter and whatever. I don't mean a film set on a farm with a brother and sister who shag each other. I don't mean a film set in dreary post-industrial heroin-riddled Welsh valleys or cities. I mean stuff people want to go and see. I mean stuff that normal people who are looking for a bit of escapism and fun, I'm talking about that stuff. The fighting, the battles, the conflict, the entertainment, the popcorn, whatever you want to call it. And all the British films forget us. And we can't really moan, well, we don't make anything for ourselves, can we? So go and see The Kingsman. Tell me what you think about it. Maybe one day there'll be something about us. Nice one. Hwyl fawr.